What's up, guys? We got an interesting one here that somebody recommended to me from Lynn Everly. The moment I realized feminism is a lie. Let's get into it.
I used to believe that feminism is a great thing, just like most women and maybe even most people. But obviously, I changed my mind since I've made multiple videos addressing the dangers of modern feminism. And since it's apparently very uncommon for a woman to be skeptical of feminism, lots of people ask me when I started hating my own kind. Which is a great question. I'm kidding, of course, because being critical of feminism doesn't equal hating women. The fact that I even have to explain this is ridiculous, but unfortunately it's necessary in the world we live in today. Anyway, in this video I'm going to tell you why I thought feminism was a good thing, and more importantly, the moment I realized it was all a lie. To give you some context, this is where I live. The Netherlands. I grew up in a very progressive country, so of course in school we also got taught about feminism. But when I was a kid, feminism wasn't promoted as extremely as it is now. It was more like men and women are all equal and women can do everything a man can do. And if you follow me for a while now, then you probably know that I think the last one is debatable, since there are natural differences between men and women. But when I was a kid, this message of women can do everything a man can do really resonated with me because I was such a tomboy. I was always hanging out with boys, getting into mischief, climbing trees, and just doing all kinds of typical boy stuff. I wasn't the stereotypical girl at all, and I didn't like it when people treated me like one. I didn't want to play with dolls, I wasn't into makeup or fashion until I was like 16, and to be completely honest, I'm still not that into it. So I always really envied boys, because they got to do all of the stuff that I wanted to do. At the same time, I was also a very sensitive and empathetic child, which are often seen as more feminine traits. But there wasn't too much room for that because my father always pushed me very hard in school and in sports. He really wanted me to be successful and he almost kind of treated me like I was his firstborn son. And therefore, when I was younger, I used to be extremely ambitious. I wanted to have a very successful career and make lots of money. And I wanted to do all of that while being on a national field hockey team as well. And while doing all of that, I also thought I could be a great mother. Because that is what I saw on TV. And not only on TV, of course. Because there is feminist indoctrination everywhere. The stories of today are almost always based on a strong female character. A girl who has to make it in a male-dominated world. And she always has such a disadvantage just because she's a girl. But she ends up succeeding anyway, despite all odds.
Yeah, it is the classic feminist fairy tale. Anything boys can do, girls can do better. Except, spoiler alert, biology had other plans. This girl realized the feminist doctrine of you can have it all was more about selling a fantasy than delivering the truth. Sure, it resonated with her as a tomboy, but let's not forget the societal programming here. You must be strong, independent, woman who don't need no man. They push this message so hard it feels like brainwashing. But here's a fun stat for you. Women report higher stress than men by 20% in trying to balance career and family. And I wonder why. Society sold her a dream and handed her a nightmare.
And when it comes to romantic stories, it's always the girl who challenges the guy that she likes. And that's what makes him fall in love with her. But what did that teach me? Basically that I need to have a successful career in order to be respected by society, and that I need to go around challenging the guys that I like in order to find true love. And those were actually my beliefs as a teenager. But that's the complete opposite of how I think about those things now. And it all goes back to a very specific moment when I was 16 that completely changed my mind about feminism and my beliefs. You see, my parents' relationship had already fallen apart by then. They were divorced. And the funny thing is that I actually come from quite a traditional household where my dad was mostly the breadwinner and my mom, she worked part-time to take care of the kids. But they had a very toxic relationship and they didn't respect each other at all. And I don't want to go too much into detail about that on the internet. But I saw their relationship and I thought, never in my life do I want such a horrible relationship with someone. And on top of that, I wasn't popular at all in school, also not with guys, and I also got bullied, and I was actually quite depressed as a teenager. I just remember thinking, my life really sucks. But around that time, I also discovered self-development content on YouTube. And I was especially interested in relationship stuff because I never really had a good example of what a healthy relationship is supposed to look like. And by accident, I came across this pickup artist YouTube channel. He was a Dutch guy giving dating advice to men. And I was kind of curious what kind of advice men get. So I watched a few of his videos, and to be honest, I was kind of shocked in the beginning because he kind of talked about women like they are objects, which I really didn't like. But the content was all about how to make women respect you and how to approach them in nightclubs and stuff, which is, by the way, the worst place to meet someone, in my opinion, if you want to meet a high quality person at least. I don't think you're going to find that in a nightclub. But the main thing I realized from watching his content is that men almost don't care at all about your career or about how much money you make.
Yeah, she thought career success was a prerequisite for respect, and challenging men was the way to their hearts. And it sounds exhausting. And surprise, surprise, watching her parents' train wreck of a marriage made her swear off that traditional setup. Here's the kickers. Feminism told her to avoid her mom's path, but forgot to mention that independent boss babe routine often led to loneliness. According to a Pew Research study, single, childless women over 30 are the fastest growing demographic. They don't show that on Netflix's strong female lead propaganda.
And what I also realized is how hard it is for a guy to actually approach a woman and deal with rejection. Because my god, that stuff is just ruthless. And this is something that most women just don't realize. Because we usually don't have to deal with rejection from guys to that degree. And where you almost have to fight for a woman to even notice you. Not to say that women don't deal with rejection, but it's a different kind of rejection. Usually later on when the woman realizes that the guy is actually not that serious about her. And I'm not saying that's necessarily always better, because that can also really emotionally damage you. But it's a different kind of rejection. But watching this dating advice for guys really changed my perspective on relationships. Because I honestly didn't know what kind of struggles men had. I mean, I was 16, so I probably didn't really know anything about life, but still. And I kind of felt betrayed, as if I was finding out that Santa isn't actually real. So yeah, that really made me start my learnings about female and male relationship dynamics. Because I was very much aware of the fact that everything I'd learned about relationships up until that point was completely wrong. Either from my parents, from school, or from TV. And from that moment, I almost made it my life's mission to not fall into the trap of a miserable marriage. And I've learned so much from basically just watching YouTube videos. Not from pickup artists, by the way, but from more legit psychologists and dating experts.
Yeah, so she took a peek behind the curtain and saw how brutal dating is for men. And ladies, here's a PSA. Rejection for men isn't cute. It's a battle royale. Men don't care about your degrees or your job title. They care about femininity. And yet feminists gaslit an entire generation to think otherwise. Fun fact, men initiate over 90% of approaches in dating. If women had to experience that kind of rejection daily, they'd need another 2 therapists on speed dial to the one that they already have.
But I think it's very funny that pickup artist content was actually my first wake-up call that modern feminism is actually very toxic. And I was lucky to realize that very early on in my life, because I was only 16 and I hadn't really dated anyone yet, so it was before a lot of damage could be done. The funny thing is that I actually get a lot of comments from people who think that my parents were just amazing and that they taught me all of this stuff, but the complete opposite is true. My motivation for learning about relationships came from a very deep desire to not repeat my parents' mistakes. And I have to say, it worked out great for me because I actually found love. But if I hadn't done all of that work, I'm pretty sure that I would have gone down a much darker path. And that dark path is actually a reality for lots of women. And for men, of course, but in a different way. Just because people don't know any better. And I would never claim that feminists are bad people. Feminists have just absorbed what their society tells them is true. And you can't blame people for wanting to be part of the culture they were born into. And of course, in the end, we're all responsible for our own actions and for fixing our own lives. Which I personally try to do as much as I can. At the end of the day, I'm just someone who's trying to figure out life just like you. I just want to share the insights I've gathered along the way. And apparently some people find that interesting. And if you're one of these people, you should really subscribe and watch this video next. Goodbye. Bye.
Yeah, so her real education didn't come from school or her parents, as she had said. It just came from YouTube. Pickup artists, psychologists, and dating experts taught her more about life than any progressive curriculum ever could. And now she's ahead of the game. And too bad most people never get this memo. Here's the rub. Feminism isn't about empowering women. It's about profiting from their misery. Why else would corporate feminism push women into miserable careers and consumerism? The truth is, society needs a reset. This girl's story is a microcosm of the damage modern feminism has done to society. society. It sells a delusional fantasy of independence and power while ignoring the natural strengths and desires of both genders. Feminism didn't empower women, it made them more stressed, lonely, and disconnected from men. Men, meanwhile, were opting out altogether. You have MGTOW, passport bros, you name it. The family unit, once a cornerstone of society, is now a shattered relic thanks to this ideology and corporate greed. Solutions start with honesty, teach men and women the truth about relationships and natural gender dynamics, encourage men to demand respect and women to embrace femininity without shame. Let's rebuild a family unit and reject the toxic agendas of elites and corporations who profit from our dysfunction. Anyways, guys, that's the end of the video here. If you like what you've seen today, hit that like button, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Drop me a comment down below on what you think. And if you have a video that you have a suggestion or anything like that to react on, drop it in the comments as well, and I'll take a look at it. Until next time, I'll catch you on the next one.